Excellency, recently the Romanian Minister of Defense was in Israel and there were reports about his visit in Israel, and I'm going to talk especially about the reports from Haaretz. And Haaretz was reporting that the bilateral exchanges in terms of security exchanges between Romania and Israel were reached $1 billion. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about the future of exchanges between Romania and Israel regarding the defense?
Well, first of all, the future is based on the past, and we have a very rich past of trust and cooperation for years between the Israeli and the Romanian security establishments, and also in the field of purchases and sales. What is unique about this relationship is that, unlike other countries, Israel does co-production with Romania. We don't just sell. We do technology cooperation and we do co-production. And every system that comes from Israel is combat proven. It comes with training, it comes with methodology. So, and it's very specific. Usually Israel is different from other countries in terms that we don't sell big platforms, but we have relative advantages in very specific fields, like cyber, like electronic warfare, like missile defense, like aeronautics, etc. So all these issues have been discussed, and we feel that we are now in a moment in which we can upgrade substantially this relationship.
This upgrade would also focus on acquiring radars. The reports were talking about radars, we're talking about drones, we're talking about exchange of technology between Israel and Romania. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, look, I cannot get into technicalities because at the end of the day, the security establishments, the Ministry of Defense of Romania and Israel will have to elaborate all these details and get into agreements. But I can certainly say that the main topics that we are interested in are things that have to do with the relative advantages that Israel has to offer. As I mentioned before, the whole issue of air defense. So, you know, I'm sure that we can reach a situation in which the suitable systems can be provided, can be discussed, and, you know, after the discussions, we will know exactly which system we will either sell or co-produce.
Did you also talk about the interoperability with NATO defense system, because Romania is part of NATO, and then acquiring defense technology from Israel will actually put this into question, like how interoperable?
Right. Well, there are solutions in this regard, because usually, first of all, Israel, part of the Israeli companies have already factories here in Romania, and also they cooperate with European companies that actually meet the standards of interoperability. So, although there are some limitations when it comes to different systems, there are also opportunities to overcome that by doing co-production.
Mm-hmm. Because you were talking about co-production, there have been discussions about the offset question. I mean, the fact that if you buy defense mechanisms from different countries, then that country should invest into your own industry, into your own defense industry. Is Israel open to this?
Of course. Well, actually, this is a fact that Israel has been the most open. And we had in the past very elaborate schemes of offset that actually usually Romania doesn't necessarily have to that extent with other countries. So I think in that respect we also have a pretty good record.
Because my next question was regarding the talking about the exchanges, about the acquisitions of Romania from Israel in the defense system. Are you looking at government-to-government business, or are you looking to a tender-based business?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, it depends on Romania itself. We feel that there are different possibilities when you get the security ministries, the defense ministries, talking together. The potential of government to government is higher, because then you can discuss discuss more sensitive issues. You can get to very specific solutions, and when you issue a tender, it's just a matter of meeting that tender, and the negotiation process is less efficient in that regard. So we have G2G schemes with many countries in Europe. And of course, at the end of the day, I believe it's going to be a combination of both, because there are some requirements that the Romanian government has to meet. Sometimes they can do G2G, sometimes they can't. So we'll have to sort it out.
Coming to Romania and the community, the Jewish community in Romania, which actually links the two countries, there have always been discussions about the Museum of the Memory of the Holocaust, which is a long-term project that was never, it was always discussed, but it never came into reality. It never became a reality. Did you talk about this yet?
Well, actually today I'm just coming from a very important event in which Prime Minister Ciucă signed the contract for the erection of the museum. I think that the project is finally moving forward. So the design was already granted to a company, and now there is going to be the erection, and the funds, my understanding is that have been found. This is a very important project. We are very glad that the Romanian government is doing it. I think it's going to serve first and foremost the Romanian population, because it's going to be much easier to learn about that dark period in our history, in your history, which is very important for generations to come. This is it's going to be a great opportunity to educate the new generation. So I'm very glad about it.
Will Israel get involved into this project directly, as in funds or objects, or as far as you know?
Well, look, usually there are many museums, museums that were established in Europe and other places. So in terms of the standards, how you do it, I think they are pretty much known, and the institutions that are working on Holocaust remembrance cooperate with each other. There is Yad Vashem in Israel. There is, of course, the Elie Wiesel Foundation here. They are in contact. There is IRA. There is the Holocaust Museum in Washington. They cooperate between themselves, and I believe that at the end of the day we're going to be able to support the process in any way that the Romanian government asks us to.
Talking about the situation in the Middle East, and especially the conflict between Israel and Palestine, my question would be, because it's a long-lasting conflict and apparently there is no solution for peace in the near future, does Israel see any country or any union as a mediator in this conflict? Could you point out one?
Yeah, well, actually, the Middle East has changed in a very, very significant way in the last decade, because in the past this conflict used to be the central issue in international politics, and it ceased to be that way for many reasons. First of all, because of the decrease in the importance of the Middle East geostrategically. Second, because of the Arab Spring and the Arab turmoil that actually torn countries apart. Because of the fact that there are many other conflicts in the Middle East that are much more important and disastrous in terms of consequences. Look at Syria, for example, which out of the 24 million, 12 million people either left the country or were moved from their houses. Look at the conflict in Iraq. Look what's going on between Iran and the Sunni states. So what happened in the last few years created a situation in which many countries, Arab countries in the Arab world, changed their view of Israel from an enemy to actually a country that can support their national security. That's why we have the Abraham Accords, and that's why there is a different view about Israel in the region in general. Now, in the context of the Palestinian issue, what happened is that the crisis within Palestinian society is also, it resembles also the crisis that you have in the larger Arab world. So, although both we and European countries and the United States invested a lot in trying to help the Palestinians to create their own institutions, there is a crisis there. Not only the difference between Hamas and Fatah, but also a crisis of leadership. Okay? And that creates a situation in which it's very hard for Israel to have a reliable partner for negotiations. We offered several times in the past very generous peace plans to our Palestinian neighbors. It didn't work. So right now I think we are concentrating in trying to keep stability as much as we can and convince our neighbors that the way of terror is not going to work for them. When you look at the region, you see which countries are controlled by terrorists. They are not in a good shape. Look at what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in Lebanon, etc. All these countries with militias that are, unstable. At the end of the day, we have to create stability, and we are doing it by, first of all, supporting our neighbors economically as much as we can, and also trying to find dialogue, to create the conditions that we need in order to renew at some point a negotiation.
You were talking about a crisis of leadership, especially in Palestine. Would the support of Israel for elections, the long debated elections in the Palestinian territories, be a solution?
Well, it's a good question. I'm not sure. The main problem in many of these countries in the region and societies is that on the one hand the political establishment is weak, and then when you have elections the Islamic radicals take over. So the issue is how to create a situation in which this will change. I don't know, we cannot interfere in their own business. They will have to sort it out by themselves. What we can do is do the best that we can, first of all, to keep our security and economic interests, and then to support processes that they will promote if these processes are constructive.
Right before, or maybe when you took over your mission here in Romania, there were attacks from Gaza to Israel. How is Israel regarding the scenario? Does it regard Gaza as a separate entity from Palestine? What are the scenarios for peace that involve the Gaza region?
Well, actually, we left the Gaza Strip with the hope that we will be able to maintain stability. Unfortunately, the Hamas terrorist organization took over. We are trying to get the situation stabilized by building deterrence. This is something that I think is very common among the security challenges that countries have. Sometimes you have an adversary that you cannot just defeat. Israel, I don't think the Israeli society is interested in invading Gaza again. So if you are not going to militarily solve it, then you have to create the conditions in which there will be interest on the other side, first of all, not to attack you, and second, to engage in a positive and constructive dialogue. Right now, Hamas is not interested in peace with Israel. So we will have to be patient, and we will have to create the capabilities to have the deterrence that we need so Hamas stops this kind of behavior.
On Monday, there was the reopening of the platform between the EU-Israel platform of dialogue, which involved also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also the Prime Minister of Israel.
Right.
Given the current security situation, is Israel gaining more a louder voice when it comes to the dialogue with the European Union? Do you assess this?
Yeah, well, I think that Israel became, generally speaking, much more attractive because it is not only a security power, but it's also an economic power. And I saw when I was working at the Prime Minister's office, what are the issues that usually countries in Europe, what is the agenda that they come with when they come to Israel. Usually, they are first and foremost interested in Israeli innovation, in cooperation, economic cooperation, in investments, in creating the frameworks that are needed in order to untap the economic potential. Israel is part also in Horizon, the R&D facility of the European Union. We want to expand our relations with the European Union also to the cultural field, to the digital field. We have an open skies agreement with Europe. So Europe is very important as a great partner for Israel. And And increasingly, we want to deal with that instead of only dealing with issues that have to do with conflict. So the conflict is important and we have to sort it out, but it cannot be a condition to fulfilling the interest, the common interest that we have. So we saw it first and foremost in the bilateral field, because many countries in Europe were actually flocking Israel to come and do cooperation. And it took some time to transpire also to the multilateral field, because there were countries that were more conservative in that regard. So it took some time in order to get to this moment, but I think it's a very important achievement, and we can build on it in order to expand our cooperation even further.
But given the reinforcement of this dialogue regarding the economical part, would it make, and I'm going back to my question, would it make the European Union a mediator when it comes to the conflict?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the whole issue of who is going to be the mediator, I think it can be important, but it's not the main question. The main question is whether we're going to have the conditions to have, and the interest on both sides, to have a conducive dialogue that gets into a certain result. We saw that when such interests exist, like for example, between us and the Arab countries in the Gulf, or between us and Egypt or Jordan, then we find a way to cooperate. And the mediation is not the main topic.
And talking about economics, high officials talk about food crisis, that there will be a food crisis in the near future. Israel has state-of-the-art agriculture. Is Israel open to collaborating with Romania in terms of agriculture, and do you have facts about it?
Sure. So I'll tell you exactly what is my working plan, because this is what I started to do, okay? First of all, in Romania, you have a huge agricultural sector. You have the big farms, okay? There, Israel can cooperate with big farms on technology that has to do with increasing the yield and increasing the control, the sensors that you need in order to increase the yields. Then there are the medium-sized farms, the smaller farms, in which we can cooperate, especially in the field of irrigation. What I'm trying to understand now is how the Romanian irrigation sector works and what can we do in order to take out more of the water that you already have. Because Romania is very rich in water, but there are some parts of Romania that lack water. So Israel is probably the most efficient country when it comes to water management. We have a system in which we, first of all, prevent leakage. Okay? We have an integrated system with a lot of sensors. We purify 90% of our sewage water, and we irrigate 70% of our crops with purified water. Okay? So these solutions do not necessarily fit the Romanian agriculture, but some of these solutions can fit. Of course, there's desalination. I don't think that desalination, is relevant maybe for Romania, but the bottom line is that we can assess the situation together and see what are the best solutions that we can implement. So there is the cooperation between governments, and then there is the cooperation in the private sector, and we have to push both of them. Israel imports a lot of grain from Romania, and now we want to also start importing not only live animals, but also processed meat. And we are working on that because Romania can be a huge supplier for the Israeli market. Our population is growing very fast, and we are opening our markets for agricultural produce to come. And Romania is a great partner, so we were working on that full steam ahead.
But is Romania prepared, because you were talking about processed meat, is Romania prepared to meet the requirements of the Israeli society when it comes to processed meat?
Well, it's a professional issue that has to do with phytosanitary requirements, and the veterinary services are already in contact. They are going to do their work. There are some private sector companies that are pushing the government to do this. I believe we can do this, and it's doable, and we're going to work until we achieve it.
And also, high officials foresee an energy crisis, and the European Union is pushing towards green energy. How is Israel able to support Romania or support the European Union in terms of technology, in terms of knowledge?
Well, actually, many things are already happening. Romania is attracting a lot of foreign direct investment, including investment from Israel. This crisis that we are passing now is also a great opportunity. I think it was Winston Churchill that said, never get a good crisis to waste, right? And Romania actually is using this crisis because you are attracting a lot of foreign investment. I just saw the data today that you attracted, I think in 21, 8.9 billion euros of foreign investment. So Israel is a pretty strong player in the investments in renewable energy. There are actually several companies already operating in Romania, and the biggest solar field being built today in Romania is an Israeli investment. It's a company traded in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange that operates from London, but it's Israeli ownership. So we are already engaging in that. I had a very good meeting with the Minister of Energy about this, and we are going to continue that. So some of these energies are very innovative. Some of them are technologies that already exist. So we have to combine between the technology that already exists, is proved and we can implement on the ground, and this is already happening, and the developments in green energy, like, for example, hydrogen, and many other fields. So the field of high-tech is conducive not just for the agricultural sector, but in general, we are going to promote that as well. In Romania, you have a pretty good, vibrant high-tech sector, which has a pretty good relative advantage on cyber, IT, fintech. So we are mapping that and trying to see how can it fit to the Israeli market, what kind of cooperation we can have between the Israeli high-tech companies and the local ones in these fields that I mentioned, but also in other fields as well.
When you're talking about cooperation, economical cooperation between Israel and Romania, are you talking about private cooperation, government-based cooperation, and how the two merge actually?
Right. Well, usually it merges in the classical way in which the government has to supply the tools for the private sector to operate. So the main entrepreneurship and cooperation comes from the private sector. They do the investment, they do the cooperation, and the government has to support them. So my job as a government is to create a situation in which, first of all, I give the information that people, the entrepreneurs, need. Second, that I help them with your bureaucracy here and in Israel in order to overcome and remove the obstacles. And once this is done, we can also organize very specific delegations that will deal with pinpointed issues. So, for example, this year we had two delegations to Oradea and Timișoara that dealt with digital health. Health is a huge sector for cooperation between Israel and Romania. We already have our academic institutions working together for many years. And now it's about time to start implementing it in also projects of private entrepreneurship. So in this visit in Oradea, we spoke not only with the local government, but also with hospitals, local hospitals. We also had an innovation delegation. We're going to bring a water delegation also to come to other places in Romania. So we can do very, very specific things. But at the end of the day, in order for the private sector to really seek all opportunities, we need to remove obstacles. For example, there are many Israeli construction companies in Romania. They want building permits, okay? So, et cetera, et cetera. We need to help them to continue the flow of investment.
At this point in time, can you imagine what an Israeli man, businessman or Israeli businesswoman think about Romania? When they think about Romania, they see what?
Well, they see a country that is very stable, very secure. They see a country that is member in the EU, that is member in NATO, that is pretty open and inviting for foreign investment. So you have many Israelis coming here. One of the first things I did when I arrived to Romania is to meet with the Israeli businessmen operating here so they can inform me of what are the conditions. And this is a very vibrant business community. And many Israelis are very interested in what's going on in Romania, and we are going to encourage it even more. We're also taking advantage of the personal connections between Romanian Jews that emigrated to Israel and the second generation that are also very interested in the business here. So that's a huge support that we get in order to untap the potential in full.
Presently, Europe, the European continent, is experiencing conflicts after decades of peace. Israel has been living with conflict ever since it was formed as a state. Is there any advice that Israel could give to Europe that is now in conflict?
Well, look, it's I think we have to be humble. You know, we have enough trouble for ourselves, and we have to deal with our own trouble. But at the end of the day, it's an issue of self-reliance. Okay, alliances are a very good thing. I think that the fact that, as I said before, Romania is part of NATO and part of the EU is a great asset for Romanian national security. And the additional layer is, of course, creating your own capabilities in order to, first of all, contribute to the alliance, but also contribute to yourself. And as much as you get self-empowered, you are not only safer, but you are also more respected by other players that come to you to cooperate. And this is what we are witnessing in Israel. We are investing 6.5% of our GDP in defense. 6.5. Imagine the average European is 2 or less than 2. So the fact that this is changing in Europe, I think, is important, because at the end of the day, when Europe is safer and more trustworthy of its own capabilities, it can also project the values that we all believe in together. The values of democracy, of stability, of prosperity, of free markets. This is what we share with Europe. This is what we share with Romania, and we want our partners to be stronger.
And the last question has to do with a more technical thing regarding your mandate in Romania as an ambassador. Did you start learning Romanian, and what were the first words that you learned?
Am început învățat românește din 4-5 luni cu o profesoră română in Israel. And I hope that I will continue to strengthen it.
Do you have a deadline to speak Romanian?
Well, I don't have a test. You know, it's not a requirement, but I want to study Romanian because, first of all, this is my 5th mission abroad, and I always knew the language of the country I went into, and also because I'm interested in Romanian culture and history, and I'm interested to interact with Romanian people. So as much as I improve my language skills, I will be able to fulfill my mission in a much better way.